We're going to move to our next speaker, Robert Valgenti, who is the chair of the Department of Religion and Philosophy at Lebanon Valley College, the sponsor of Menus of Change, and he's going to talk more about how do we make this happen.
Start with this. Thanks for that poll question. All the no's made me feel right at home as a philosopher. That's generally the public reaction when a philosopher walks in the room, is just, no, what is he going to do? So today, well, I'd first like to just thank the organizers. This has been great so far, and I'm really happy to present what we've been doing both on my small campus in Pennsylvania, but also across the country with the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. So today, I think I probably hit this and it went, yeah, let me go back here. There we go. So today, let me begin simply by telling a story. This story is a story of how we are going to learn to change the way that we eat for the betterment of the planet and for the betterment of each other, one delicious bite at a time. It's a story with a plurality of protagonists, multiple authors and voices, and a story that tackles the global through the intimate connection we have with food. And so here's where we'll get to pick up on a theme I think that Christopher touched upon and has really been central to a lot of the things we heard yesterday. That the curious and somewhat unexpected theme of this story is taste. And so as a philosopher, I'll burden you with one philosophical thing today, so no one pulls a cognitive hamstring or anything like that. But I just want to talk about this interesting paradox. And the paradox is that the common shared experience that binds us all together as human eaters across the globe is also a supremely singular, proximal, and incommensurable experience. This is the fascinating thing about taste. It all matters for us. We all have a stake in what we know that we like, but it's something that, at the end of the day, any communication between us about what taste is going to be compromised. It is singular and it's unique, but I think that this is the key. So there'll be two themes really in this story today. The first is that theme of taste, and the second is how do we take a global challenge and treat it at the local level? Right there. So if you're a Star Wars fan like me, the problem is the Death Star. You know, if you remember from Star Wars, Luke Skywalker has to drop basically that photon torpedo right into the small thermal exhaust port on the Death Star and take the whole thing down. We've got a Death Star of a problem, and we've got innumerable exhaust ports. Every set of taste buds that's out there. We've got all of these tiny little challenges out there for us to make and connect. And so this is what we're trying to do. Now these choices are difficult because food quite literally hits us in the gut. Food, whether it's delicious or it's disgusting, has an incredible power to undermine our best intentions. But that power is not inherently a negative one. The same hardwiring that makes us so susceptible to the perils of excessive fat, sugar, and salt consumption also makes us susceptible to the benefits of the fresh, the seasonal, the enriching and enticing foods that are better for us, for those around us, and for the planet. So what if we could leverage the power of taste to empower our food choices for the common good? We know that food as material and potential energy impacts the biological aspect of our being, but its value and its force are properly understood as the products of culture, of our habits and practices, our shared values, our personal memories and attachments, our failures, but also our great achievements. So my point is this, that change is not only possible, but likely if we can harness the positive power and food culture to motivate our best scientific practices and to influence our eating behaviors for the benefit of ourselves and our shared future. So right in line with what Christopher was telling us, all of the data, all of the knowledge, all of the scientific practice in the world is not going to help us if we don't place it into the proper social context that is understandable to all of the eaters now and the potential eaters in the future. So what we're doing at the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, we can think, whoops, hey, look at that. We can think of that as a wedge strategy, that we're finding solutions through the cultures and contexts that frame the problem. We're proposing a correction rather than a simple alternative, and providing, we might say, a wedge rather than a silver bullet. So as Christopher mentioned, the Menus of Change is perhaps the starting point here, so I'll move quickly through this. This was begun by the Culinary Institute of America and Harvard School of Public Health, with that goal to advance better food choices and menu development at the intersection of health, sustainability, culinary insight, and next generation business strategy. And so here's the infographic we saw before. Here are those principles. Once again, they'll come up in some of the research projects that I share. How are we going to feed 9 to 10 billion, leveraging chefs and their expertise? And what happens is that the reports produced on the state of our food system in 2013 and 2014 give rise to the idea for an initiative that becomes the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative. And so let me tell you a little bit about the basic structure of the collaborative, but then most importantly, get into some of the projects that are there. So the vision of MCURC is to collaborate on research and education in support of culinary-centric, evidence-based food systems innovation within and beyond universities. So for the first time, what we're trying to do is bring together senior university administrators, dining directors, nutrition and sustainability managers, chefs, and academics, all working together, not just on singular campuses, but across campuses. And so currently, there are 57 colleges and universities, most of those in the United States, 3 ex officio members, 4 research collaborators, and 225 total members in the MCURC. And we're broken up into a set of groups. I'll go a little bit later into the working groups and the work that we're doing. But if we want to think of the MCURC as a wedge strategy, I like to think of it in terms of these following points. It's cross-disciplinary in terms of its composition. We see different groups coming to work together. It's cross-disciplinary in terms of its strategy. It knows that there's not that one silver bullet that's going to solve all of the problems. And as a philosopher, I like to think it's got this theoretical core. It's got this cross-disciplinary idea at its heart. It relies on scientific method and is data-driven, but it understands that knowledge and data are not enough. Human eating is a cultural experience through and through, and so we need to lead with taste. But of course, this is the challenge. Taste is subjective. Taste is difficult. Even though I like certain things and what I like to eat, different days, different things happen. So how do we achieve that goal? Well, along with taste, I said that the other theme to keep in mind is how do we connect the global to the very local? So I'll say a little bit about the global level, but really I'm going to talk about the local. So the MCURC is working on a collective impact initiative, and so by collaborating across campuses with all of these different players, they're able to pool information about protein production, protein consumption, protein purchasing across campuses to see and measure the kind of impact that is going to be made, not just on an individual campus's dining hall, but to see if what we're doing will actually have an impact on the larger system. And so this collective impact strategy works to understand and improve the collective impact of purchasing and menu decisions. So you could see the menus have changed. Those 24 principles before. These are brought into the act. So starting with data, leveraging the collective wisdom, collecting and tracking data across all of these universities and how they're working together, and then testing those scenarios and solutions. But what I've been most intimately involved with is how we collaborate locally. So I believe the slides are going to be available, and please, I welcome anyone to talk to me after the presentation today or anytime during the conference about the very specific things that I've been doing on campus. And on a very small campus, so these are things that we can start anywhere. We know that students are going to be the way forward. When we think about the impact that the MCURC is having, we can think about within the member institutions, 700,000 meals are served every day. That'll be 15 billion meals of those students impacted by the changes that we're making directly during those students' lifetimes. And those students will become the leaders, the entrepreneurs, the consumers, and the parents of the future. So this is not just something that's happening right now on the ground, but something that we see as operating generationally. So what we've been trying to do is first and foremost assess and define our stakeholder needs, bringing all of these various groups together with the idea of hitting the students where it counts, on their taste buds. And we're trying to empower change in what we're calling the living laboratory of the dining hall, encouraging experimentation, connecting a daily habit or routine to coursework and academic growth, cultivating agency, and creating experiments that are repeatable, embedded in real-world practices, and sensitive to context, and also scalable. And so the MCURC has two working groups: an education work that primarily produces materials for chefs and dining service operators so they can implement those practices in their dining halls, and you see the signage over by the food this morning is indicative of that. And then the research working group. Christopher is a member of the research working group along with me, establishing research questions to pursue, stimulating designs, developing a next generation culinary-centric national research agenda. And the research working group is made up both of faculty and academics, but also operators. So once again, pooling the knowledge that we have together. And then in trying to shift diets, once again, we're trying to create experiments that are scalable, use applied solutions, promote delicious, healthy, and sustainable diets. And we might say that ultimately this is a hybrid approach to research. Academics on one side, operators on the other. As I like to think of it, problematizers on one side, because we're always asking these tough questions and setting up the research scenarios, and problem solvers on the others. Chefs, better than anyone, know how to bring the product to the table and get it done right. And so we're trying to establish a new paradigm of research, if you will. One that fosters collaborative research between food service professionals and academics, across academic departments and disciplines, and among numerous institutions. And so how do we make the college dining hall a living laboratory? So I want to share with you some of the current research projects that we've been working on and some that we've done in the past. And so you can see over this kind of wavy semi-timeline, we started with the first experiment of implementation science and then moved through a couple that have just been completed recently. The first project we did was really, and this was spearheaded by Christopher, to see if we could actually make this model work. So it was an experiment designed just to test the idea of cross-campus collaboration. So leveraging the idea of implementation science, could we get the schools to participate? Could we standardize the implementation procedures? Could we get people willing to participate in all of this? And so this was our first project, the Meatball Challenge, where we tried to create mushroom hybrid meatballs and do a taste test across various campuses. We, at the end of the day, had 5 universities participate with a total of 698 students taking part in the taste test. It was a cross-sectional single-blind taste test of 4 mushroom beef meatball blends, and the emphasis was placed on the process. And so this was a collaborative effort to bring this all together. We got preference rankings for different blend ratios across different schools. And we actually, at the end of the day, most importantly, came to realize that multi-site dining hall-based interventions are feasible for collecting quantitative and qualitative data about new menu strategies. And so this was really the key. Could we make this work? Could we replicate it across campuses? And can we get good data from this? So from there, we moved on to what we call the DISH study. And this was the brainchild of Brad Turnwald, a psychology PhD at Stanford. So this is really his work. And the idea of the project was to see, could changing the name of a dish's label actually get students to try it? Could we change the name of a vegetable dish so that students would eat more vegetables? This was the focus of the DISH study. And so we, once again, took a study that was done at Stanford University and then tried to implement this across a number of different colleges. So presenting students on different days with versions of carrots or broccoli with different names to see if there would be a difference. One focusing on the indulgent side of the dish, another one just focusing on the ingredient carrots, another one focusing on the health impacts, and and other ways of presenting that would sort of play into the traditional approach of just telling them that they're better for them. Once again, we had 6 schools here: my own college, Rutgers, USC, UNT, Stanford, and Northeastern University. Over the course of a semester, this involved 138,000 different diner decisions, 71 vegetable dishes, 24 different types of vegetables over the course of 185 days. And so the key findings of this, could taste-focused label be a scalable intervention? This implementation, which happened every day in these dining halls, was done correctly 89% of the time, which is rather quite incredible. Do the effects replicate? We know that based on comparison to the Stanford study that was done originally, that there was a 29% increase in the consumption of the tasty vegetables, the ones that were labeled tasty versus the ones that were labeled healthy, and a 14% increase in the ones that were labeled tasty versus the basic labels. And so what factors impact how well taste-focused labeling works? The deliciousness of the vegetable dish. Focusing on taste, announcing taste, we were able to show across campuses that just presenting something as a delicious option and making it taste good will get students to eat it. More recently, we've done what we're calling coordinated tasting tables. And this is a way to introduce new dishes to dining halls, but also to double down on the ideas of sustainability and good nutrition. So the first tasting table that we did focused on sustainable chicken, and we had 3 different cultural dishes that were presented to students, and this allowed us not only to get taste feedback from students, but also to ask them questions about sustainable food options and how they viewed their own habits in general. So we could see how it hits upon a variety of the menus of change principles that are there. At the end of the day, we had 6 schools and 562 total students surveyed. And we were able to pool the data. So this is one way that we can pool data across campuses to see if there are similarities in how students think about food and how they favor certain dishes, or if there are differences. So we're able to see statistics on recipe enjoyment, what they thought about sustainable chicken in general, and about food in general. And then we have what we're calling seed studies, which are little quick studies that just get us to see, do we want to try this project? So we've done 2 recently with 7 institutions surveying over 1,000 students. One of those seed studies was about food waste messaging. Would students pay attention to messaging in dining halls about food waste, and would it influence their behavior, at least according to them, self-reported? And so number of schools that participated, once again, we know that 70% of students recall seeing the sign, 55% said that it impacted their food choices, and on certain matters rated at 75% or more. So this gives us some idea that we might then want to try a larger scale project related to food waste messaging. And then in our pipeline, we have a number of projects, all of which are trying to advance those 24 principles, all of which are trying to leverage the power of various campuses. And then, how much time do I have left? Oh, 7 minutes, okay. So let me say a little bit about what I've been doing on my very small campus in central Pennsylvania. We have about 1,600 students on campus, about 1,000 students eat in the dining hall at any given meal. So some years ago, this was actually, I came to the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative because a couple of the founding members had seen work that I was doing on my own campus. So in 2013, I founded this program called E.A.T, Engage, Analyze, Transform. And the basic premise was, could I turn the dining hall into a living laboratory? Could I take the room that students might spend the most time in while they're on campus into a place that reinforces the values we're trying to teach elsewhere? And I was going to do this through food and getting students to design projects that were focused on sustainability, on human health and wellness, on food ethics and food culture. And these projects were embedded into the curriculum. So I created a 2-course sequence of project design and project implementation. I took students from all across the campus in different disciplines. They just had to propose a project that was going to meet one of the goals of the group. And so over the past 6 years, I've done 28 student projects. Those students get to present their research every summer at a large food studies conference, and it's allowed me to build collaboration with faculty, dining staff, and administrators. And so we've done things like we've worked with sensory scientists, and we've developed our own taste lab. So when we want to introduce new dishes, we get student feedback, but we've also tried to take fan favorites, chicken tenders and mac and cheese, and update them so that they're more sustainable and healthier, and then test them to see before we put them out into the dining hall if students are going to react to them positively. So one of the first projects we did was the hybrid burger idea, take it from the protein flipped concept of the Menus of Change, and we tried a bean burger, a squash burger, a mushroom burger, and a traditional burger, so you can see the results from students on a 9-point hedonic scale. What we've tended to find is that if the average score is over 7, it will fly in the dining hall. Students will respond to it positively. We've also been tracking our waste, and so this started with the traditional students sorting the waste and taking away, weighing the waste at the end of the day, and then seeing if at the end of all of it we can make some dent in how much food students are wasting. Last year I had a student who said, it'd be great if we can do this every day. We can't get students to sort through the waste every day. Let's set up a camera and see if we can come up with a visual method to approximate how much waste is on plates. So his research is still ongoing. It's a great project, and he's still refining the method to try to estimate plate waste by looking at how much is on the plate. But that camera has also allowed us to do other things. We've done projects with portion sizing, and we did a project last year where we cut the pizza into 10 slices rather than 8 slices, and we realized that reduces not only how much pizza students take by weight, but how much waste ends up on the waste conveyor as well. We've done this with our famed Chicken Tender Thursday Day, and we know that when staff hand out and portion the chicken, about 1/3 less waste ends up on the conveyor. So we're able to really kind of tie these things together. And then last year, I had a student work with students in our digital communications department, and they designed an app. And this is an app that allows students not only to do all the things like check how much money they have and all that fun stuff, but it allows us to collect direct feedback. It allows students to track nutritional information on all of their dishes. And this is all, once again, trying to get students to come up with projects, design ideas, and implement them in the dining hall so they could see that what the choices that they make on a daily basis influence things that are much larger than what's happening in their small dining hall. So let me conclude just by saying a little bit about how I think that the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative is trying to rewrite the menu in this story, the theme of which has everything to do with taste. So here we are at the singular point of contact, which is also, I would say, a plurality of individual and group preferences, identities, histories, and ways of life. And so to achieve a unified goal, we must appeal to the diversity of our experiences. Those differences, these taste differences, are not the obstacle, but the accelerant for innovation, for change, and for hope. And so when I think about the MCURC approach, it's trying to achieve global goals through local points of contact, valuing the social and cultural context of good scientific research, leveraging multiple skills and types of knowledge and points of intervention across all sectors of the campus, and leading with taste so that we can aim ultimately for transformation. So this new theme, which is an old theme, right? Taste. This is where it all starts. This is where we all make our first point of contact with food. I would say that the MCURC has taken this collaborative approach. Leading with taste empowers the chefs, provides opportunities through administration and institutions that support us. It leverages the research of academics and scholars, and it connects with the future through student desires. And we should think that the global then is not achieved merely through the accumulation of actions. It is the result of all the voices, the effects that are coordinated and interlocked with a common mission, one dining choice at a time. We understand that global change is not merely the effect of our actions, but made possible through the coordination of the differences, the knowledge and insight that comprises the living expertise of those involved in our food systems. Actions that are local, embedded in culture and context, open to a plurality of expressions, and ultimately land on us as the responsible agents of change. Thank you.